Aloha mai kako. You are watching Hawaii Political Reporter.
System is going to continue over and over and over again to put blame on us collectively. That's classic authoritarianism, where your neighbor does something wrong in the old Soviet Union, so you go to jail too. Well, I don't live in North Korea or the old Soviet Union. I live in America. And because we have mental patients like this guy out there is the reason I have a Second Amendment to protect myself and to protect my family. I don't want to live in New York or Chicago where the criminals rule and where a criminal government doesn't want the public being armed, or Mexico that has the highest crime rate in the world and has disarmed their people. I want to live in a free country like Switzerland or the United States, and I'm trying to keep America free. So Santa Barbara shooter had multiple therapists. Go look that up. Public enraged at media's call to ban guns. Affluenza, stricken teen goes on retribution. Gun owners will not be blamed. Those are just some of the videos and the info war ammo for you to be able to wake up friends and family and engage in the info war. The only way they can get our guns is if we lay down and let them. They tried to blame us for Sandy Hook. That blew up in their face. Aurora, same deal. This is going to blow up in their face. The truth is mass shootings are flat. Crime with guns is down 52% since 1992 because the people are getting armed, and the New World Order is not going to be able to stop it. We're going to protect ourselves from scum like this. Oh, and by the way, you want to blame people collectively? Government killed 262 million people in the 20th century alone, non-military deaths. It's called democide. So government is collectively to blame a lot more than I am to blame for this scumbag. I'm not to blame. You're not to blame. This guy is to blame.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Silverman is with flexyourright.org. Flexyourrights.org. And Steve Silverman is with us doing an incredible job about bringing people the knowledge to fight back against the police state in their daily lives. And if you know anything about the kind of activism we do, a little knowledge can go a long way, simply knowing how to assert yourself. Right now he's researching and developing a movie for Know Your Rights about jury nullification, and you know how relevant this is in fighting back against the police state and the prosecutorial terrorists known as the legal system, certainly not the justice system. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, you know, I'd love to talk to you about very specific things that you're working on, but before we get to that, you know the Adam versus the Man audience, you know that people who listen to my show very much care about standing up for their own freedom, and we're in a constant, not struggle or fight, but we are constantly working on improving our skills. And these are very complicated issues in terms of how do you talk to a cop in this situation or that situation. And you said that there are a lot of mistakes that libertarians make, and I certainly agree. And I'd like to tap your wisdom today. So what do you think are the most important things that libertarians should know that they either get wrong or are not fully aware of?
Well, let's see. I think in the context of both like dealing with police on the street and, you know, the sort of tools for non-compliance that we create, essentially, I think your audience is already really familiar with these. You know, officer, am I free to go? I don't consent to any searches. Officer, I have nothing to say until I speak with my lawyer. I'm sure your audience is familiar with our videos and the clips that we have all online. And so I've been really actually pretty psyched with how people have incorporated that information when dealing with police on the streets. Now, the problem that a lot of folks had, I would say, and still sometimes have, is oftentimes they talk too much to the police, and they start talking about, this is my natural right, you know, to life, and they get a little too chatty in ways where it doesn't necessarily help any more so than simply shutting up and asking you for free to go.
Right. No, and
using
yeah,
to consent to searches.
And I should make this distinction because I do this a lot, and sometimes I want to say, don't try this at home, but it's different when you're like me, willing to go to jail for this and face the consequences for petty stuff. And a lot of that happens in the course of my interactions with police. But, you know, we just put out a video where we were trolling a drunk driving checkpoint, which is really, of course, a revenue generating code enforcement shakedown, and ended up in a really good conversation with one of the cops there. But it's like, if you want to have a conversation with a cop about natural rights, go to a police station and ask if someone's available for a friendly conversation, and they'll probably supply someone, or you can find someone. Don't do it when you're on the street and they're in uniform and they're in the, enforcer mode.
Right, and I would make that specific distinction between civil disobedience and simply being prepared but not being ready, say, to be arrested. You don't have a camera crew around. So if you are engaging in civil disobedience and you're making a specific point about free speech, then by all means, say what you want to say.
Keep talking until you get arrested.
To be arrested, and then you fight that out later. And you're someone who is a master of it. Primarily, our audience, I sort of.
Wait, master. I have to say, master is an exaggeration. I'm still just figuring this out as I go.
Everybody makes mistakes sometimes, but we're all babies in the game of life here. But when it comes to knowing your constitutional rights, it's a big part of our audience are people who don't want any part of dealing with police, but they've been trained to think that simply doing everything the police officer says is the right thing to do. Or they sometimes go a little bit further in the other direction where they get really angry all of a sudden and start to blow up, and then you then have terrible outcomes that happen from either being too complicit or trying to match aggression with aggression. And so we're trying to sort of meet folks who are not prepared to deal with that, but basically giving them the most basic information, saying, it's you can be calm and cool and not comply with unreasonable and unconstitutional requests. But when it comes to sort of the next, what I would argue is like another level of knowing your constitutional rights, say you've mastered how to deal with police on the street, you know how to record the police, you understand the basic rules of police search and seizure if you're pulled over in a traffic stop. But where we're going from this is sort of a higher level, is flexing your constitutional rights in court, but not necessarily as a defendant, but as a member of a jury. And this is where your very amazing and impressive knowledge of history and your right to vote your conscience, rather than simply voting a verdict based specifically on the facts, this is where you might want to tone down all of that impressive knowledge you have, because if you do display it at this point, you're going to be struck from that jury. You're not going to be able to use that important prerogative that you have.
So it's like a way to temporarily infiltrate the state.
Those are your words.
FlexYourRights.org does not endorse this characterization whatsoever. But you understand the point that you're
no doubt about it.
You're serving a state function. When you are serving on the jury, you are working for the government. You may have been shanghaied into that one way or another.
Ooh,
but
no, Adam, you're wrong about that. You're absolutely wrong about that. And this is a very, very. Maybe you were just saying that to set me up.
No, I'm not. No, hold on. I believe I know where you're going with this. So let me, if I may. You are working for the government, even if you are working for the people as an infiltrator, and you're going to vote not guilty and hang any jury you're on in order to save people from being victimized for exercising their rights, keeping them from being convicted for victimless crime laws. But you are in your role as a juror, even when you subvert the intent of the state, you are working for the state, and you are reinforcing this idea that this is a good way to settle disputes, that a jury of your peers, or that the government system has anything to do with justice. So you see that analysis, right? Okay.
And I get that. I get that. I know you have the Adam versus the Man audience has you got folks who call yourselves anarchists, voluntarists, and sort of this whole alphabet soup of like what are ultimately obscure terms. Okay, but the fact is, the Constitution and the right to trial by jury was intended by the founders to be a point between the state and the people. And so in a sense, it is the most radical thing you can do when you get that jury summons. Say, I'm going to be involved in this. I'm going to do this because I can do it in a way that can ultimately protect somebody's liberty. And so
hold on, Steve. I have to, if I may, hold on, if I may here. We have the time. I'd like to take this conversation on a little bit of a detour about the purpose of the jury trial in the role of government. And I'd like to compare it to the Bill of Rights. the people that created the Constitution wanted to create a strong central government. That was their alternative to the Articles of Confederation. They wanted to create a government that had these powers to exploit people. That was the purpose. This was Hamilton wanting the power to create another central bank. This was the idea of having a standing army, when the founders, not the framers of the Constitution, but the original founders, were very much against the idea of a standing army, calling it the greatest threat to liberty. So they go, well, gee, how do we get people to accept all of this bullshit that we're about to foist upon them? How do we get people to think that this government can be kept in check? How do we get them to accept this absurd idea of minarchism, that they can trust a central authority with all the guns to limit itself? Oh, I know. We'll put a Bill of Rights in the Constitution that says they have rights that the government can't infringe upon. And as long as there are words on paper, these silly, gullible fools will accept this strong central authority. But obviously, the Bill of Rights means nothing to a government that treats you like a possession, which is the definition of government. It's a territorial monopoly. It owns everything within its arbitrary lines drawn on a map. So similarly, trial by jury is, how do we get the people to accept this arbitrary authority that is government and all these laws written by politicians? Oh, I know. We'll tell them that we'll never send them to jail unless the jury of their peers sends them there, and we're going to manipulate the process. And so within jury nullification, you get to sort of subvert that. But I think it's important to recognize the jury trial is not justice. It is still a shadow or a feint or an illusion of justice that government gives the people, just like elections, in order to get them to accept the greater tyranny. That doesn't change any of your strategy, which I wholeheartedly endorse.
Okay, I don't think I disagreed with pretty much anything that you just said there. I'm sort of like, wait, where's the part where I'm disagreeing with Adam, and then I'm not. So,
it was the wording that you used. It was the wording that you used, that you said that the jury is this place where the people are able to to put the government in check, and it's important to point out that we shouldn't be clamoring for better constitutional government or better trials by government juries, but that we should be clamoring for real justice, which is the elimination of coercion.
Right, and that is the ultimate goal is liberty and justice.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, with all of Flex Your Rights materials, it's all about, really, if you look at it, like what we're creating are tools of non-compliance that exist within the law as it is. I mean, you can discuss, we can discuss the legitimacy of that law or not. I mean, I'm a believer of natural rights. I believe that the Constitution simply has, enshrine those rights by writing them out, but they don't exist because they were put to
Wait a second. I mean, again, if you say the Constitution enshrined these rights, you got to read in the Bill of Rights, sure, but you got to read the first part. And the first part of the Constitution says, we're going to create this massive institution that owns you and doesn't give a crap about your rights at all and has all this power over you. Oh, and by the way, here, we're going to enshrine some rights so that you'll accept it.
I will. Well, I guess I don't want to spend too much time sort of getting into the semantics of that with you, because I know you thought about this further, and
it's not
I think
semantics.
I've given some thought to it. But the thing that I'm most concerned about, that happens all the time. I have conversations with people that are libertarian, anarchist, whatever. They're people who get it, and they're the exact sort of people that are constantly disqualifying themselves from this very powerful and I would argue radical process of serving on a jury, because they would rather not cut off their beard, because it's part of them. They would rather not plug up the big holes in their ears or pull the piercings out of their face. And I'm like, whoa. Wouldn't you, if you were facing a trial? I mean, of course, then there's the whole problem of the plea bargain system, which completely is a workaround around the jury system, because they put so many stones on top of you, crushing you, and say, well, why don't you just take a plea rather than facing jury? Because if you do, then the penalty, if you lose, will be so severe. And so those folks, of course, who do decide to go to jury trial, it's either because they didn't really have any other options, and or they're either intensely principled or intensely crazy, Now,
if I may share the significance of my story in D.C. on that count really quickly here, I really wanted to try jury nullification. I really wanted to bring the case to trial, and got bullied into a corner, as is always the case, and had a bunch of other charges thrown at me. And the reason my lawyer was able to convince me not to do that and to take the plea instead was, you are talking about the people of D.C., the District of Criminals. Right. It's not like you're in Montana where everybody believes that gun control is crap and criminal. These are the people who are the hardcore statists. Most of them are government employees to begin with. They support the system, and that's why you can't get justice there. And he told me, all right, so you get one person on the jury. Do you think that the government who is assembling this jury and controlling this process can't guarantee that they have the jury that they want, at least in Washington, D.C.? And yeah, it's pretty easy for them. And I have to say, it would be awesome if there were more cases. And I wish mine could have been a pioneering case, but no, I was underprepared and I didn't plan it well enough and didn't anticipate this. And because not enough people have heard of what you talk about on flexyourrights.org, I couldn't go into that situation with confidence. But there are a lot of people with cases and charges that are of a lower scale threat in terms of time potential sentence that
and
can do this.
That being said, Adam, you will not hear me. I will not begrudge any defendant who takes a plea because of the fear of the likelihood of a guilty verdict. I mean, the fact is, and generally it's like a 90%, or more guilty verdict, and that's a big part of the problem. However, I do begrudge jurors who might disagree with the law or think that the law is being misapplied, or this is a malicious prosecution, and yet still go along and convict because they are told and they are instructed repeatedly by the judge. Your responsibility is to judge the facts of the case. My responsibility is to judge the law. And you are to accept the law as I give it to you.
Wait a second.
These are the words. These are the words that judges use. The law that I give to you.
Wait a second. Are you telling me that government officials lie?
They do, Adam. That's a very important thing to learn, and that's
my
what
illusions
teaches.
Shattered.
Police lie. Government officials lie. The judges lie. Oftentimes, the lie is not necessarily conscious. Like it's not that they actually think that they're lying, but the judges have been saying this lie for so long that they think that it's legal truth. But the fact is, jurors fundamentally have the right, the power, and I would argue the duty to vote not guilty if their conscience compels them to do that, and to never allow themselves to be cowed into voting with the majority just because the judge insists they must come up with a unanimous verdict. That's not true. You can hang the jury. But the most important and the most difficult thing to do is once you get that jury summons, and of course you get that jury summons, and it's going to be the most exciting day of your life. You're not going to go on Twitter and go, fuck my life, I have jury duty, how do I get out of this? And start Googling how to avoid jury duty, because that's bullshit. I mean, that's ridiculous. So anytime anyone has a friend who does that, please send them links to jury nullification, everything, because they simply might not simply know that they do have this option, this power. And so step 2 is just showing up. Is showing up looking ready to get on that jury. And that means you are going to do something that you might think is very hard, but it's not that hard.
So like you got to eat McDonald's and gain 30 pounds so you look like an average American?
if you feel compelled to do that, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend.
Put a pillow under your shirt.
Anyone needs to harm their health in order to do it. But I think that the thing that especially if you're a dude, I think the look you want to go for is basically like computer tech in a DEA office. And that means
oh, that's great.
covering up your tattoos, of course. I know a lot of your audience has got probably some pretty badass like tattoos. You're covering those up with a button-down solid shirt. You're pulling the plugs out of your ears. I even saw these like little like flesh-colored like silicone plugs that you could put in there in order to look square. And you might already have them if you have like family reunions. You don't feel like dealing with all the flack. Put those in there. Pull out the piercings out of your face. Make yourself look like a dork like me.
Well, hold on.
I've had some crazy facial hair and long hair, man. I'm just like a square married guy now, but I get that.
Well, hold on.
You can always grow that hair back.
Yes, and if I may go just a step further with this, if you have the potential to save someone's life potentially, which is really the potential here, shaving or trimming. You don't have to shave, but trim back to. I mean, the beards are back. Beards are back in style, man.
I would take the beard off.
Hold on. It's got to be trimmed though.
On the voir dires where I sat in there, I've never seen. I'm like, I'm like,
Never
there's
seen
this
a
many
juror
dudes
with a beard.
They never pick dudes with beards. They will never pick dudes with
Actually,
ponytails.
well, that gets to the point that I really wanted to make here, and why I loved what you said is like the DEA IT support dude or something like that, right? And it's because you want to look meek and manipulatable. You want to look like an obedient beta male, like a company man. And if you're a woman, it's not as hard to pull that off, because men who are controlling the process, and sometimes it's women judges or whatever, don't assume that women can do this. And this is just sort of the general, and I might be wrong, but this is at least what I understand, the general social bias, is that people assume women are not going to stand up for themselves as much as men. So women can just completely look normal or look themselves. But again, it's the same thing. You want to look meek and manipulatable, and someone who's just, oh, yes, Your Honor, I'm going to follow instructions. Oh, yes, prosecutor, I'm going to listen to everything you say. And that's what's going to get you on the jury, right?
I think removing any outward signs of nonconformity
Yes.
is a good move. I mean, even down to your glasses. Like, you don't need those thick, awesome hipster glasses. Like, go get a pair of glasses with like thin or no rims. Like, and like, if you're a dude, get a pair of khaki pants. If you're a girl with dreadlocks, brush those dreadlocks off. You know, brush them out and pull your hair back and put it up. Anyone with any sort of funky flair is just not going to get picked for the jury. And so if your goal is justice, it's okay to look like a dork in the pursuit of justice. You just might free somebody in the process. And so okay, you've done this. You've got your jury summons. You are excited to go. You have dorked yourself out in every way you can. You've just you know, we're all kind of nerds, you know, like release like your inner, like release your inner conformist nerd, whatever that is. You know, just make yourself look bland, you know, and you've immediately improved your odds. But then it's going to be the questions you're going to get. This is where our audiences are likely to say things like, well, I believe that the war on marijuana is inappropriate and unconstitutional, and I don't trust police, so therefore I will not take their testimony seriously. No. This is where you just don't reveal that information. You know, you don't have to reveal that. When they ask those questions, they often ask the whole jury, is there anyone here who would be unable to, you know, not, you know, come up with a verdict, you know, because a guilty verdict because they believe that police, you know, lie. You know, don't put your hand up there. I mean, this is where you don't have to reveal that. At the same time, you never want to lie outright, but the key is you can be truthful without revealing the full extent of your conscience and where you come from. Everybody comes with bias, so this idea that they're sort of like just bringing people who have no bias whatsoever and no connection and whatsoever. It's like they're trying to, you know, find little
spineless
computers to basically vote yes or no, and that is the opposite of what the jury system is intended to be. You are judges of fact, yes. Now, I think in probably the majority of cases you get, the problem of your conscience coming into conflict, it might not be the case. I mean, you might get a case where it's looking like all the evidence points to, beyond a reasonable doubt, this person like murdered this person. Like there was a rape here beyond a reasonable doubt. There was theft, malice, and your conscience is likely to be like, oh yeah, that's totally, you know, that looks legit. I don't always trust the police, but there are other witnesses there that seem trustworthy. The guy confessed, you know, all
whatever.
the evidence points to beyond a
Yeah,
reasonable doubt. Your conscience isn't going to play into that, and it's not going to be a problem. But when you are on a case, you know, where it's you know, some black kid who gets caught with a sunglass case full of drugs, and there doesn't seem to be any other evidence pointing to the fact that this person has been involved in anything malicious at all, you want to leave your mind kind of open to the possibility that maybe there will be evidence suggesting that this person did some harm to others. And so that in a way will help guide you when you go through this process. It's like, let your mind be open to the possibility that there is evidence suggesting that this person did do harm to people. And so of course you can be unbiased going to this. Of course you can evaluate all the evidence, because after all the evidence is presented and there is no evidence pointing to violence or maliciousness, then you will simply vote. You can vote not guilty based on the facts that were presented in case. And so okay, somehow you make yourself look square after you're excited about, after you get that jury summons, you get picked. you get picked for the jury, and you're now a juror. And you're going to get those instructions from the judge before you go in. They're going to say, make it very clear that your role is to simply judge the facts of this case. My role is to judge the law. You are only to base your decision solely based on the facts presented in this case. And if the facts point to guilt, you must find the defendant guilty. And that's another question they might even ask you during voir dire. I like this one. This is directly from Clay Conrad, who wrote the book on jury nullification called Jury Nullification, Evolution of a Doctrine. I mean, it's the academic book. And he says, if the prosecutor judge asks, are you able to put your opinions inside and vote guilty? Adam, what would your answer be? Of course, you shaved your beard, you've disappeared your identity somehow in order to get
Of course, I could lie if you put a gun to my head.
How would you answer that question? Are you able to put your opinions aside, Adam, and vote guilty?
I am certainly able to do that. My mouth works, my hand works. I could write guilty if I need to. I could say guilty if that's what is required of me. Absolutely.
Yes, that is the correct answer. Just like you could put your arm down a garbage disposal, but you're just not going to. You can always change your mind later. You are capable of doing these things. And that is how you must think as you go through this process. But so many people, this is where they blow up. This is where they give their speech about the failure of the criminal justice system, about police lying. Yeah, that stuff's like all true, but this isn't the place for that. Unless, of course, you are pretty sure you have been struck from the jury. Then you can
let loose.
You can pull the cord and go boom, and let loose until they physically force you out. That's your prerogative too. Then you might be able to influence the jury that way, but not until then. You're a stealth agent, man. You want to get on that jury. So you're on that jury, and you're now in this jury room, and you're deliberating. Everyone's talking. You're gonna do your best to kind of let everyone talk. But at the end, if it's looking like this is a non-violent offense. This is some sort of victimless crime. That shouldn't even be a crime. You're going to vote not guilty. You're going to try to base your deliberation based on the facts, if possible, with prompts from hopefully the defense lawyer maybe gave you something that you can hang evidence on. But at the end of the day, you're going to vote not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. You might have 11 people in your face, 11 strangers in a room. There is nobody or very few people who are trained to deal with being in a room full of 11 people who just hate you and are trying to get you to do what they want. But that might be what it comes to, and you're going to vote not guilty. They might write a letter to the judge. The judge is going to write back a strictly worded letter. It's called an Allen charge, basically saying you must come up with a unanimous verdict, which essentially gives permission to the judge to unleash, the jury on you. But you're going to deal with their slings and their arrows, their screaming, and you're not going to give in because there's too much at stake. You're going to vote not guilty despite your pounding head. You're going to feel sick to your stomach, but you're going to vote not guilty, and you're going to hang that jury if need be. So what if they'd have to retry it? The whole thing is illegitimate. Who cares if they're wasting money on illegitimate? At least you aren't the one who's complicit in putting someone in prison, and you have to assume they are going to be sentenced to prison, even if the judge and of course the jurors will say, we are not even to consider the consequences of this case. Really? You're not to consider the consequences of the penalty? In what moral universe does that make any sense whatsoever? I mean, it's you have to assume it's going to be, in a sense, a death sentence.
Yes.
Or something up to that.
Well, hold on. It's important to recognize
this person would lose their head. It's absolute nonsense. And anyone who pays any attention to mandatory minimum drug sentences, prison issues, has to go in understanding and appreciating that this is a criminal trial. You're dealing with a criminal felony conviction that will likely include jail time, if not a light felony that there may allow for probation or community service, but you have to assume that this person is going to be doing some time.
And going to jail is a threat to your life in and of itself, because they're such dangerous environments, and your life is in the hands of the state entirely when you're in that controlled environment. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. I've never heard someone really lay it out just the way that you have. The website is flexyourrights.org.
American Constitution, 1913, corrupting the system, devalue dollar, hyperinflation, the Federal Reserve, controlled by Lucifer. He can see you lying in your eye. Bye 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 bye. You know can hide from Judge Jesus Christ. Hallelujah. No